Hey guys, Godfather of Anxiety here. Just wanted to do a video about the importance of telling someone when you are experiencing anxiety or depression, or any other mental health condition for that matter. This is something that is extremely difficult for a lot of people, especially men, because of the way we've been conditioned from the time we were young to be strong, not to admit weakness. So this becomes something that's very difficult to do, and it's also difficult for women as well because of the stigma that is frequently attached to people who suffer from mental health issues. So, I wanted to do this video because it's just we're going to go through logically why it's so important to do this, even though it's difficult. And I'll add in some of my own personal experiences with things that have happened when I have maybe even expanded my openness about some of the mental health issues I've had. And it might surprise you what has happened in those instances. So anyways, I'm going to go through some reasons why it only makes sense and is only logical to make sure that we let somebody know when we have an anxiety condition or depression, when it's affecting our lives. So what do I mean by that? I mean, when you're altering fairly major things in your life because of the mental health condition, whether it be your employment, whether it be your interpersonal relationships with your family, whether it be your travel habits, when it's starting to literally affect the way you're living and whether or not you're doing the things you normally do, this is the time when it is going to require treatment. And it's also the time when you need to let somebody know. So, first of all, letting someone know, it's a crucial first step, right? It's the way that we're going to actually acknowledge we have an issue. I know for me, it was about 1.5 years into my search for what was going on with me that I finally had to start admitting that maybe anxiety wasn't a secondary symptom. Maybe it was the primary symptom, and the physical symptoms I was experiencing, and at least the way the symptoms were being interpreted by my brain, was directly related to anxiety. This took me about 1.5 years to even come to terms with. And for those of you who have experienced anxiety conditions, you'll understand why. The symptoms are very physical. They're very physiological. Dizziness, and it's not like when you first get this. I had 31 years without panic attacks. And when they first start happening, it's not as easy as you would think to just, say, oh, this is anxiety, this is stress. So, especially not as a primary cause. You understand, like right from the jump, I understood that stress was a component. But to say that I knew that it was the primary cause, no, it took about 1.5 years to come to terms with that. So when we tell somebody about this, that's going to be that we are admitting that, okay, I might have a problem with anxiety or depression. And it's going to be a significant step, right? Because once someone else knows, the likelihood of something positive, there being a positive outcome, increases exponentially. The next thing this does, and I made a video recently about isolation. It reduces isolation in those feelings of being alone. When we're struggling with our mental health and we're very, it's just like I say, we're so guarded about these types of things, and to have that burden on us all the time is heavy. It's heavy to bear, And of course, the things that our what if minds are conjuring up don't help. We're thinking, am I going insane? If you're having certain types of anxiety, like intrusive thoughts, you might be thinking, am I evil? all kinds of terrible things that we're carrying around. Depression can literally make you feel like you don't care about anything anymore. And that is a very scary feeling for people who have big hearts and who care very deeply. So by letting someone know the feelings of isolation and that we're just, out on an island by ourselves and there's something horrible wrong with us that is unfixable, that those feelings will become less. Again, guys, letting someone know is not a magic pill. It's not going to make everything go away. It doesn't. But it's the beginning of you acknowledging an issue and starting to take some actions in that direction. And there's other really positive things about letting someone know. Another thing that you're going to get when you let someone know is emotional support and validation. And something that I should have probably prefaced my comments with, when we choose who to let know about our mental health issues, about anxiety and depression, we want to make sure it's somebody that we trust and somebody that we believe cares about us or loves us. This is very important because trust is everything. Even when you're talking to a therapist or a psychiatrist about this, trust is paramount. It really is. Because, mental health it's a very sensitive subject, and you definitely want somebody who's going to have discretion and not going to, go around telling people about your mental health issues. So, but having said that, you will get emotional support and validation. So we act enough differently if we haven't had clinical depression or clinical anxiety, people will wonder what's going on anyways. They probably already have, especially people who love us. So then when we confide in them about a mental health issue, about these anxious feelings, about the racing thoughts, whatever, panic attacks, whatever we might be experiencing, they're probably gonna nod their head and say, I knew something was wrong because you haven't been acting like yourself. The same thing with depression. I mean, depression to people outside of us, clinical depression is a really obvious thing, because you can see that you don't care about things that you used to care about, and that's very alarming from the outside looking in. It's not like it's the people that are close to us aren't going to realize something is wrong. And again, this can help us to feel understood, right? Because if you're confiding in somebody that really cares about you, they're going to be supportive. They're going to say, okay, well, what can I do to help? That's what you're going to get. Another thing that happens, and this goes along with something that's really been a big part of what I've noticed has happened when I have confided in people close to me about anxiety and depression. And you may get some new perspectives and coping strategies. And the reason for this is because so many other people out there are experiencing clinical anxiety and clinical depression. It is a huge number of people that are taking SSRIs, that are taking different benzodiazepines. The life that we're living today is we're inundated with things we were never inundated with even just a short time ago. Even back in the 1990s, the amount of stressful information that can be ascertained in a short amount of time, even without wanting to be inundated with it, through our phones, through things, through the internet, it puts us in a situation to be exposed to much more stressful conditions. Not to mention diet, exercise, things have gotten, really bad with that. With all the advancements in technology, we're not exercising as much as we used to. We're still making the same poor food choices. And these devices also have a tendency of messing with our circadian rhythm. So we're up way more than we should be, and we're not getting the type of deep sleep that we should because of our exposure to these screens. So, there's a lot of things that are making it so that, a lot of people, I believe way more than at any other time in human history, are experiencing these mental health conditions. And another thing that I think adds to it, the last thing that I'll mention that I think makes it so there be such a proliferation of anxiety and depression right now, is because we're not as busy as we used to be. So don't get me wrong. I know a lot of you out there are probably working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that before in history, we actually spent time, working through the day and living life and being engaged with our environment, which is much different than sitting in front of a screen on a computer. It's just a completely different experience. And I believe, they've shown that the difference between, let's say, reading and how much mental engagement that takes and watching a movie. And there's no comparison. Reading takes deep mental engagement and imagination, whereas watching a movie, it's kind of like junk food, right? It's all right there on the screen. And I'm not trying to put down watching movies, but I'm just saying our minds have access to all this information now, but we're not as busy in ways that will help alleviate our stress as we used to be at other times in human history. And that's my 2 cents on that. And again, I've talked about it too in my other videos, how important it is to stay busy, especially mentally, but even physically. Staying busy is so important when you have anxiety, when you're experiencing any of the anxiety spectrum conditions. So what you end up finding out, though, when you confide in others, is you find out a lot of the people have dealt with a similar issue. And they can be people that you think have it all together. You can be talking to somebody that the last thing you would think is that they ever, took an SSRI, or that they ever, they have a good job, a great family, everything seems to be going great. And then you find out they went through the same thing. And maybe you find out they're also seeing a therapist. They're also taking some type of medication. And, that's been my experience with this mental health journey. I remember way back when I had just started to try to get treatment. I was unsuccessful. But I remember a group of people that I was working with. I was working weekends at the time. And like most of the shift was taking an SSRI. It was really strange to me. But now, as I've gone on in my mental health journey, I realize a lot of people are having a hard time dealing with life as it currently is constructed. And however pervasive these mental health conditions were prior to 2020, since then, since the pandemic and the forced isolation, the mental health, at least in the United States, the mental health community and doctors and therapists haven't been able to keep up with the amount of need in that field, because so many people struggled because of the isolation, not to mention the fear that was gripping society, especially early on in the pandemic. So to get back to my point, though, in the video, so when you tell people, you're going to be surprised how many people, like I said, even people you think who have it together, are going through these same things. And if they have, they might be able to let you know how they dealt with it. They might be able to let you know things that are essentially going to work as cheat codes. You know, things that you hadn't even considered before, things about exposure therapy and techniques they use there, things that they do to relax, that help them to relax without self-medicating with food or alcohol. There's a lot of things you can learn, and we're all different. So it's not always going to be, oh yeah, you talk to this person, and if you do it just like they did it, everything's going to be great. No, that's why we go, and that's why I always encourage you guys to seek the help of a mental health professional, because that's who is really going to help you recover from the mental health issues that you're experiencing. Yeah, so and that's another really important reason why you need to tell somebody, because the likelihood of you getting help goes up exponentially once you've let a friend, a close friend, maybe your partner, whoever, know about what you're dealing with. Because most likely, if they care about you, they're going to say, you know, you should go see if you can get some help. Because that's what a rational person who's not concerned with the stigma, who's not concerned with, you know, wrapped up in their racing thoughts and the mental health condition, they're going to flip from the outside. They're going to say, you need to go see a doctor. You know, you need to go see a therapist. And that's really good advice, because it is essential. For me, what I believe, and it's not that you can't do it on your own. You can. I know people who have fought and battled and been successful with anxiety conditions without ever seeing a therapist. It is possible, but it's usually a lot harder, and it makes the process take a lot longer. And that's what I don't want you guys doing. I don't want you guys losing years of your life like I did because you're either trying to white knuckle it, you don't like doctors, you don't, because that's the thing. If you go to a well-trained mental health professional, they're going to be able to tell you why you're having some of these things happen and what you can and should do in order to minimize them or mitigate these symptoms, as well as potentially offer you medication that, if you're in a certain level of anxiety, like where I was at when I went finally and got treated successfully, I would argue that without professional help, I would have been in big trouble, because the medications that I started were essential in getting me down from where I was experiencing constant derealization, constant depersonalization, constant panic attacks, not sleeping at all. It took me from there down to here. And then I could start doing things like exposure therapy. I could start doing cognitive behavioral therapy. I could start doing the things that are going to actually get you better long term. But when you're almost at a psychotic break level of anxiety, you may have to take a medication to get that to come down a little. And that's not an admission of weakness or, you know, you suck at life. That's nothing to do with that. You're stuck in fight or flight. And if you're at that point, you've probably been stuck in fight or flight for a long time. And it's extremely important to get yourself out of that state. That state is both mentally, emotionally, and physically, it's killing you. Because we were never intended to stay in fight or flight. That's just the facts. So, you know, again, telling people is going to help get us to a therapist, help us get on the road to recovery more quickly. And this is the last thing I'm going to mention that I think is so important. It's why I started my channel. Once you let other people know about your mental health conditions, it helps them to acknowledge maybe their own and encourages them to get help. Especially if you maybe are kind of on the other side and you've basically recovered from your mental health condition. And that was what was the driving impetus for me to start this channel. I thought, it's not like I got everything perfect all the time. I don't. That would be a big fat lie. But I've recovered to the point where I can live a full life. I have good relationships with my family. I've physically in a much better place with my health. And, it did take therapy. It did take some medication. It took therapy. And it takes constant maintenance to keep myself here. But I felt like, boy, if I could just let people know, even if it just allows you guys to realize that what's going on with you. Because I know, especially something like intrusive thoughts or, some of the weird things that happen with anxiety, you can start thinking you're losing your mind or something even worse than that. And to hear someone else talk about it and, to see that they made a recovery, I feel like that is, gigantic. And so that's another good reason to tell other people, because you'd be shocked at how many people are like, oh my goodness, yeah, I have the same thing, and they just hadn't worked up the courage to get it dealt with. And, when we set on these things, especially clinical depression, excuse me, guys, where that can lead. The people that we've lost to this. And they were people that a lot of them were probably just hesitant to let anyone know about this, unnatural emptiness that they were dealing with. And, to me, that's unacceptable, to allow just some, poorly interpreted electrical impulses in your brain lead to you, tapping out early, and not in the carnage that it does to the people around you. I just, to me, that's unacceptable. It is something that, we need to really, people who have clinical depression, you need to get rid of the stigma attached to getting help. Remember, getting help is so much more intelligent, thoughtful, caring than doing something that is quick and permanent and obviously ends any hope for you, but also destroys those you leave behind. And I don't ever want anybody, to have to go through this because they were embarrassed to talk about their clinical depression. And, that's a big reason why I'm making this video here, because by telling others, it's going, you'd be surprised. And they don't always tell you right then that they're going through the same thing. But then you might find out that, well, when I heard that, when you told me that what you were going through, it made me look at my own situation. Or I knew this other person that was going through something similar, maybe a child or a relative or a partner, and they encouraged them to go get help. And that is how, things need to happen. Because again, if you have a broken bone, or you get diagnosed, heaven forbid, with cancer or some other serious illness, you don't consider it weakness to go to the doctor and get chemotherapy, or to go to the doctor and get your broken bone set in a cast. That's not weakness. That's intelligence and wanting to get better. Well, guess what? These mental health conditions are no different. Something has gone wrong, a combination of usually heredity, external stress, poor sleep, poor diet, poor exercise, and you are stuck in the on switch with fight or flight, and that's in the case with anxiety. There's a very strong link between anxiety and depression. So there's also some things wrong with the way electrical impulses are being interpreted by your brain with depression, because you basically, as I've described in some of my other videos, it's almost like someone just like removes your soul and your ability to care, and it's just incredibly frightening and isolating. But that's why you got to tell somebody. So guys, if you get nothing else out of this video, if you're going through something and you're worried about the embarrassment, you're worried about what people are going to think of you, now remember, I've never been the type of a person who cared a lot what others think, because I realized at a young age that some people are going to love you, some people are never going to like you. You just can't live your life being worried about what other people think of you. That's a ridiculous way to live your life, and you'll never be happy. But so, you can't allow something like that is insanely foolish, to allow other people's perception keep you from getting help you need, so that you can begin living your life again, and also avoid maybe a ridiculously early demise, either because you made a choice to end things, or just because chronic stress takes a physical toll on us. We weren't meant to be in fight or flight, so your health will suffer in the long term if you don't get your anxiety treated. So guys, if you're going through anxiety or depression, make sure you get to a mental health professional. At least, if you're a little hesitant to do that, at least tell your close friend, your partner, someone you know who you can trust and who loves you. And it will help take some of that burden off of you. And guys, think about it from the other perspective. If someone came and confided in you that they were dealing with a mental health condition and they didn't feel right, or would you be like, oh, you're crazy, stay away from me? The only people that are going to react like that are ignorant people. Unfortunately, there's more of those than there should be, but the ignorant people and people who don't care about us. So yes, it's important to choose wisely who we confide in, but it's also very important to confide in somebody and let them know what you're going through, so you can get rid of some of the burden of dealing with some of these mental health issues. And also, you'll be on the road to going and getting the professional help you probably need to recover and to live a full life. And that's what I want for everybody who watches the channel. I want you guys to live your life, to use all this intelligence and creativity and aim it outwards, so that you can have just the life that you deserve. So thank you guys so much for the engagement with the channel. Everything is going very well. Thanks for everything. And until my next video, take care.